Hey everyone, ready to dive into a case that's got the internet talking?
You bet. We're looking at age verification, online content, and a whole lot of legal questions swirling around.
You guys sent over a ton of documents for this deep dive, and let me tell you, this case could really change how we think about free speech online.
It's a big one.
So we're talking Texas House Bill 1181, or HB 1181 for short, and it's all about keeping minors away from online content that's deemed harmful.
Right. The goal is to make sure websites that host this type of content have age verification measures in place.
Makes sense on the surface,
Yeah.
right? But it gets complicated fast.
Yeah, because it's not just about protecting kids. It's about how these rules might affect adults' rights to free speech online. Those rights that are protected by the First Amendment.
It's a fine line to walk, for sure. To really get this, we gotta dig into the legal arguments. And lucky for us, we've got excerpts from the court filings themselves.
Petitions, replies, the works. It's like a behind-the-scenes look at a legal showdown.
And these documents don't hold back, they get right to the heart of the issue.
Which is, does requiring age verification actually infringe on what adult can access online, even if it's constitutionally protected? The group challenging the law, the Free Speech Coalition, says it absolutely does.
And they're not messing around, they're bringing up strict scrutiny under the First Amendment. That's serious legal stuff, right?
Oh yeah, it means the court's standards are sky high if this law wants to be considered constitutional. Texas has to prove this is the only way, and I mean the only way, to achieve what they're setting out to do.
And that it's a compelling government interest in the first place.
Exactly. And that's not easy, especially when you're talking about something as massive and ever-changing as the internet.
Right, like how do you even start to regulate something that big and constantly evolving?
That's what makes this case so fascinating, and it's a point the Free Speech Coalition keeps bringing up. They're saying this is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, they're comparing it to a Supreme Court case from way back in 1968 called Ginsburg v. New York, which was about limiting what minors could see in the offline world.
Back when you actually had to, like, go to a store to find something edgy, not just click a link.
Exactly. And that's a huge difference. The internet gives you a level of anonymity and access that just didn't exist back then.
So trying to use a case about brick-and-mortar stores to make a point about the internet is, well, it's a bit of a stretch.
You could say that. And it brings up a major concern about age verification. What kind of effect will this have on adults who are trying to get to content that's perfectly legal?
Yeah, I can see that. Nobody wants to hand over their driver's license just to visit a website, even if they're allowed to be there. Feels like a privacy invasion.
Exactly. And the chilling effect is a major point.
Yeah.
The Free Speech Coalition is hammering home. It's not just about adult content either. They're saying this fear of being watched, data breaches, all of that, could scare people away from all kinds of online content.
So it's like, is the solution worse than the problem itself?
That's what they're arguing.
Well,
And they're also saying this law is, and this is important, under-inclusive.
under-inclusive, I'm not sure I follow.
So they're saying it's like patching up a few holes in a dam while ignoring the fact that the whole thing is about to burst. It just won't work.
Wow, okay, I get it. So what are they missing?
Well, for one, the law doesn't apply to search engines or social media, even though those are some of the main ways kids get to stuff online.
So it's more about looking like you're doing something than actually fixing the problem.
That's the argument. And to make things even more interesting, we've got other groups weighing in with their 2 cents. Amicus briefs, they're called. Basically, letters to the court from anyone who has a stake in the outcome.
Everybody wants to be heard on this one, so who else is speaking up?
Well, there's this group, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, or APIC, and they are really worried about the potential for, well, government surveillance.
Big Brother is watching.
That's the concern. And not just that, but the effect this could have on everyone's online freedom.
So this isn't just some niche case about adult content. This has implications for all of us.
100%.
Mhm.
And even though it's the Free Speech Coalition leading the charge against this law, their arguments, they matter for everyone.
It's about the very foundation of a free and open internet. And on that note, let's take a pause to gather our thoughts. We'll be back in a moment to explore some alternative solutions and really dig into the potential consequences of this case. Stay with us.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides of HB 1181, but let's get real for a second. How well does age verification even work online?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, it's not exactly airtight. There's a lot of research out there that shows just how easy it is for these systems to be bypassed.
You're saying kids can get around them.
Kids, tech-savvy adults, you name it. Fake IDs, borrowing accounts, even just straight up lying about their age.
So much for that. Right. And even when it does work, there's the issue of accuracy. Like with facial recognition software, which is often touted as the solution, but well, it's not foolproof. It can get someone's age wrong, which means adults who should have access might be denied.
Wait, you're telling me we can't even tell how old someone is from a photo?
It's trickier than you'd think. Lighting, image quality, even a person's facial expression can throw off those algorithms.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of bias baked into these systems, which can lead to some really unfair outcomes.
Right, because tech isn't neutral. It's built by people with their own biases and blind spots.
Exactly. So we're stuck with these age verification methods that are both intrusive and potentially inaccurate. It makes you wonder if there's a better way.
Yeah, like what about those parental controls we talked about earlier? What other options are there?
One that's gaining traction is content filtering software. It's like giving users the power to block specific types of content based on what they're comfortable with.
So it's like a personalized internet filter.
Exactly. Parents can set it up for their kids, blocking whatever they want, adult content, violent games, you name it.
That does sound helpful, but doesn't that create a sort of filter bubble, limiting what people are exposed to?
That's a valid point. But the key difference is that it's user-controlled. You choose what you see and don't see, which is all about giving people agency.
It's like choosing your own adventure, but online.
I like that. Of course, it's not perfect. There's always the risk of going overboard with the filtering or missing out on valuable content.
There's that balance again. Finding the sweet spot is tricky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's why this case is so important. It's pushing us to really examine these big questions about how we protect freedom of speech while also keeping kids safe online, and how technology plays into all of this.
It's a lot to unpack. Are there any other approaches out there trying to tackle this?
One that's gaining momentum is age-appropriate design. Instead of focusing on blocking content after it's already out there, this is about designing websites and platforms with kids in mind from the very beginning.
So building in those safeguards from the ground up.
Exactly, like default privacy settings that are stricter for younger users, be more transparent about data collection, and just generally making things easier for kids to understand.
That makes sense. But let's be real, getting tech companies on board with this might be tough. Their track record with user privacy, especially when it comes to kids, isn't exactly stellar.
True. Aligning profit motives with ethical design can be a challenge, but there's a growing movement pushing for better online protections for children. And both here in the U.S. and internationally, we're seeing more regulations trying to make that happen.
And let's not underestimate the power of us, the users. If enough people demand platforms that take kids' safety seriously, companies will have to listen.
Absolutely. Consumer pressure can be a game changer. And it's not just on parents to advocate for this, it's on all of us to fight for a healthier, safer online world for everyone.
Because we're all in this digital space together.
Well said. And as we wrap up, I think it's important to remember, this case isn't just about one law in Texas.
It's about the bigger picture of how we navigate this digital world, how we protect those fundamental freedoms, and how we keep our kids safe in the process.
And knowing that this conversation is far from over. It's going to take all of us staying informed, being engaged, and speaking up for the kind of digital future we want to see.
Because the internet isn't some static thing. We're building it every day with our choices and our voices, and we have to do it responsibly.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you all for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time, ready to explore another corner of this incredible, always evolving digital world.
You know, as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm kind of stuck on this idea of how do we actually make all of this work? Keeping kids safe online, protecting everyone's freedoms, and, oh yeah, dealing with technology that changes every 5 minutes. It's a lot. No kidding. I think this case has really forced us to take a hard look at the digital age and admit that, well, there are no easy answers. It's not about finding that one perfect solution. It's about having those tough conversations and being willing to adapt as we go. And maybe most importantly, realizing that this is on all of us.
It's like we're trying to write the rule book while the game is still being played. You know?
Exactly. And it's not just about laws and rules either. It's about creating a culture online where everyone takes responsibility. Parents, educators, tech companies, all of us talking to our kids about this stuff, educating ourselves about the risks and the opportunities, and demanding better from the companies that basically control our online lives.
It's like, yeah, the internet is a reflection of us, isn't it? For better or worse. So if we want a digital world that's safe and fair and actually empowers people, we can't just sit back and watch. We have to be part of making that happen.
Perfectly said. And I think this case, even though it seems like it's just about one law in Texas, it really speaks to these bigger issues we're all facing as we figure out this whole digital world thing.
It's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So as we sign off today, we want to leave you with some things to think about. Because this conversation isn't over, not by a long shot. Like, what happens if other states start passing laws like HB 1181? Could we end up with an internet where what you can access depends on where you live?
Right. And what about the role of these big tech companies? Should they be doing more to protect kids online? Or is that really on parents and educators?
Yeah.
And how do we find that balance between protecting kids and, I don't know, overstepping boundaries?
These are the questions we all need to keep asking, keep debating, keep pushing for answers on. And it starts with staying informed, being part of these conversations, and speaking up for the kind of digital world we want to see.
Because at the end of the day, we're building this digital world every day with every click, every post, every choice we make online. It's our responsibility to build it right.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time when we'll dive into a whole new corner of this amazing, always changing digital landscape.